forth between the White House and the special counsel. Is the president going to testify? So this letter to the Mueller folks saying, you know what, we don't think he has to.
The president is all for transparency. Whether it helps him or hurts him, he wants to get the message out.
Here we are, day 500 of the administration.
Everywhere you look, there's Trump progress. He's there for the forgotten man and the forgotten woman, not the cranks on cable TV.
It is time for Senate Democrats to stop resisting. They're resisting the will of the American voter.
The anti-Trump media still pushing those conspiracy theories about Melania Trump's absence in public.
They are obsessed. This is just another symptom of Trump derangement syndrome. And when they haven't had enough of attacking our president, they move along and they attack his family.
There was a note in the door stating that we had a violation, a flag violation, excessive flag. We feel this is a patriotic act. It's about supporting our troops.
I can truly say I've never heard of that. Excessive patriotism.
Excessive patriotism. The town told me he had too many flags.
You know what he does? More flags.
There's a couple hundred more.
Good. We should send him more.
Come on. It's kind of like collusion. Like it's not in the books, but somehow someone's trying to.
He's going to join us later. We're going to find out where you can send him flags. I want to get people to.
He's coming on our show.
Yeah, he'll be
later
live
on, so you don't want to miss that.
I mean,
we've got a great show.
Excessive patriotism.
Yeah.
I'd like to be accused of that someday. That's kind of one of my life goals now. Not a crime.
You've been accused of other things.
I think you've already been accused of that.
Yeah.
Really?
You're about the most patriotic guy I know.
Well, let's get after it.
Well, we hope you're up with us. We've got a lot of energy this morning, and we are happy to be here, and a lot of news, as always said.
Our own Martha MacCallum interviewed Trey Gowdy at the beginning of this past week, and frankly, that interview is still reverberating because Trey Gowdy, you will remember, came on her show, and there was an expectation on the right, perhaps, that he was going to say, look, I just saw not directly the intelligence, but was briefed on the intelligence about potential spying of the Trump campaign in that Justice Department meeting that he and Devin Nunes had and others. But in fact, he came on with Martha MacCallum and said, I'm not really so sure that you can back up the idea that they were spying. And that caused a lot of problems this week among conservatives, although a lot of people left out the other part of the interview where Trey Gowdy was
said it's not about President Trump.
It's not about the president. I don't think the president's going to be charged.
Yep.
Here's what he said.
Listen.
I am even more convinced that the FBI did exactly what my fellow citizens would want them to do when they got the information they got, and that it has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
And I don't think he was expecting the reaction to that. And to your point, Ed, it's a great one. You can't play that. You shouldn't without including also the fact that he basically said they got nothing on Trump. I mean, the reality is they tried.
The president shouldn't be worried about it.
There were a lot of people wondering after that interview, because that interview really went viral. People were wondering, what evidence did he get? Where did he get this information that there is an evidence of spying within the campaign? So Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan were on this channel last night, and they had some things to say that sort of counter what we heard from Gowdy. Here's what they say.
What we do have is a growing body of evidence that would suggest just the opposite of what my good friend Trey Gowdy said, is indeed the FBI and DOJ did do things improperly.
I have the utmost respect for Trey Gowdy, but when he made the statement, the FBI behaved exactly like my fellow citizens would want them to behave. Really? The FBI behaved appropriately when James Comey didn't tell the American people that the guy he leaked information through, Daniel Richmond, was actually an employee of the FBI? Was Andy McCabe behaving appropriately when he lied 3 times under oath?
And remember, Trey Gowdy and Adam Schiff are not denying that there was surveillance of the Trump campaign. They're just kind of disputing the idea that there was a spy implanted in there, and this could be a bit of a
But here's the thing, Pete, they're all on the same team. We talk about Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, Trey Gowdy, Devin Nunes. Aren't they all trying to accomplish the same thing at the end?
Well, they are. That's why in Washington, politicians always say, my good friend so-and-so. Right. Usually they don't mean it, right? In this case, Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan are legitimately friends and colleagues of Trey Gowdy. I think they're all members of the Freedom Caucus, all very conservative, all quite ferocious in pursuing whether or not this actually happened and defending the president. So when Trey Gowdy said what he said, I think there was a lot of surprise from colleagues who truly respect him. I think, and I've heard from a few folks on this, ultimately Trey Gowdy probably said, the guys charged with looking into what happened followed protocol. So in that sense, maybe their hands are clean within the FBI, those individuals that looked into, was there this or that? The larger operation, though, can't be seen as one that was above board at the FBI, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's almost that idea, defend the rank and file FBI guy, but not necessarily the motives of people at the top who seem to be trying to dig up.
Because in a narrow sense, the president has said, if there was collusion, I want to find out about it. So in that case,
he charged Comey with doing. He said, if there's collusion, go look
that's
for it.
That's in the
and
Comey
find
memos.
It. Yes.
So I think part of what Gowdy was saying was the FBI followed up on that. But to the Meadows point and the Jordan point, did the FBI act properly in how they followed up? Did they really follow all the protocols? Did they go for it? And
that's
this
why,
IG report is going to tell us.
And were their protocols the same as Hillary Clinton got?
Yeah.
Or did she get
because the IG report is focusing on the other side of this, which is the Clinton investigation. Did they follow protocol there?
That's right. And the IG report we were supposed to get next week for the last 6 weeks. So maybe next week.
It's supposed to come next week from what we're being told. But as you're saying, the president is sort of this boomerang effect. He's trying to turn this back around on the DOJ. And we're now getting info about a letter that was sent back in January from President Trump's lawyers, Sekulow and Dowd, sent a letter to the DOJ saying that we're not going to basically.
To Mueller's office.
To Mueller's office. And here's a part of what it says, talking about President Trump, could neither constitutionally nor legally constitute obstruction because that would amount to him obstructing himself. Basically, they're saying he's got the power to shut this whole thing down. He's got nothing to hide here. They're trying to make it an excuse to not give the interview.
Specifically there, they were talking about the firing of James Comey, that he has the executive power to do that. So he could not have possibly obstructed justice in exercising his constitutional authority to hire and fire anyone in the executive branch. Look, anybody who's been watching Fox News Channel for the last 6 months or so knows that Alan Dershowitz has been making that point again and again and again. And he's a liberal law professor. He's not on the right. But he's just saying, look, let's bring some sanity to all of it.
And he's saying it's not because he has something to hide. It's just, as you were saying earlier, Pete, we've gotten so far down the line here, and they haven't found anything directly relating President Trump to collusion with the Russians. So why get yourself in any sort of trouble? Why say anything that might give them just a little inkling to take with them?
That's exactly right. So this 20-page memo leaked to the New York Times. It was written in January, comes out now. We don't know who leaked it. Could have been the Trump team, could have been the Mueller probe. Whoever thinks they had an advantage from it is likely where it came from. Who knows? But ultimately, to that point, if you're all the way to the end, why sit down and subject yourself to a perjury trap when you've been transparent this entire time? And if there was collusion, or even if there was a crime, it would have been leaked a long time ago. We'd all know about it, and it would be a banner so permanent on CNN that it would imprint itself into the front of the screen.
So Mike Huckabee was
move.
on, and he said the very same thing, Pete. Here's what he said.
The magic words in employment in federal or state government, for that matter, is at the pleasure of, which means that a unclassified employee can be fired for any cause. This is an investigation that so far has not produced one scintilla of evidence that the president was involved with anything that was untoward. I think his attorneys are dead right when they say they're not going to put the president in a chair facing Bob Mueller, because no good will come from that. It just won't.
We also said,
especially if you're innocent.
And what Mike Huckabee also said is that while this 20-page memo letter by the Trump attorneys lays out the idea that he could shut down a federal investigation at any point, that he has executive power to do that, there's no need to do that if you're innocent.
But if he did, would that go ultimately to the Supreme Court? You know, I mean, that could be
legal
legally
shutdown.
challenging.
But also politically, I think what Mike Huckabee was saying, which is true, is that it's untenable politically to shut down an investigation like this, because the criticism would be so large. Why take that chance politically when you believe you're innocent?
And it's unuseful if you're trying to get past that, because you're 500 days into your presidency, and everyone who hates you has tried to make it all about Russian collusion. As in last hour, we'll play the graphic again, all the accomplishments this administration has had, from the job numbers to crushing ISIS to the VA to North Korea to the Iran deal to getting rid of the Paris Climate Accord to Judge Gorsuch, all those things. If we spent any amount of time actually focusing on that, his numbers would be even higher than they are right now. And
I think that is the concern with Trump's attorneys, is if he does sit down, that's going to keep this going longer. Everyone is going to sit and focus so closely on every word that was said in that interview.
Sure. The counter argument is if you finally sit down, the investigation might finally be over.
Or it may go on and on and on.
I don't know. We don't know.
Where does that end?
It is a known unknown.
Yeah.
Who said that? Was that Donald Rumsfeld?
That's right. Correct.
Boom.
Yeah. All right, a lot going on this morning. Some other headlines I do want to bring you. New overnight, China is now warning it will back out of any new trade agreement if the U.S. raises tariffs. President Trump has threatened to increase tariffs on up to $150 billion of Chinese imports. China's stance comes as President Trump's team spent the weekend over in China for high-level trade talks. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross led those negotiations. And an off-duty FBI agent accidentally shoots someone while dancing at a nightclub. Take a look at this. You can see the handgun flying out of the agent's holster while doing a back handspring. When he goes to pick it up off the floor, the gun fires. The man was shot in the leg and then taken to a Denver hospital. Luckily, they are expected to be okay. The agent was turned over to the FBI. Also, this boiling lava now threatening a key escape route for hundreds of homes in Hawaii. Smoldering debris now blocking major roadways, cutting off access to neighborhoods on the Big Island. Officials issued mandatory orders for residents to leave. The Kilauea volcano eruptions began last month, evacuating thousands of residents there and destroying dozens of homes. And Google is now apologizing after search results showed the word bigot smeared across North Carolina Republican State Senator Trudy Wade's picture. Well, she joined us earlier on the show, and here's what she said.
It's not that surprising to me or my colleagues back in North Carolina. It's not unusual for us being conservatives. They need to have a procedure in order to take those images down when they're not factual.
Wade says the company still has not reached out to apologize to her directly. So stay tuned for that.
Wow.
That was an interesting interview today.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as being too patriotic? One business hit with a violation for what their town calls an excessive amount of American flags. I never heard of such a thing. Their response will make you even prouder to be an American.
And the Trump economy surges, adding 223,000 jobs in May, with unemployment hitting an 18-year low. Labor participation is going up, but there's one key number flying under the radar. Charles Payne, he's here, he's live. I bet what he's got in his hand might have that key number. He's going to let us know.
It's got a lot of numbers.
He's got the answer.
Hey, Charles.
Good morning.
Hitting an 18-year low with 223,000 jobs added last month alone. But these aren't the only numbers that people should be getting excited about.
The U6 number regarding the long-term unemployed or underemployed now at 7.6%, a welcome sign of the surging economy's actual staying power.
Charles Payne has been all over this story. He's the host of Making Money, of course, on the Fox Business Network. He joins us now live to react. Good morning,
Hey,
Charles.
Charles.
Good morning.
So what stands out to you? There's a lot of, it's so positive that even the New York Times said we've basically run out of words to describe how good it is. But what stood out for you?
The U6 that you guys started with, because that's the real unemployment number. It takes unemployment. It takes people who are what's so-called marginally attached to the workforce. It takes people who work part-time for economic reasons. So it's really a real glimpse into the struggles of the actual American. That's the lowest it's been since May of 2001, where it came down, and it came down significantly. The second thing that stands out to me, and I think it's just absolutely amazing. Last month for Black Americans was absolutely amazing. One of the best jobs month I've ever seen.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's the composition of jobs that are being created. You know, the so-called goods producing jobs. I talk about them all the time. Construction, manufacturing, mining. Those jobs have swelled to the point where people thought they would never come back. They're coming back dramatically. But I will tell you, last month, 76,000 blacks entered the labor force. The unemployment rate for Black Americans went to an all-time low. And in last month, 200,000 more Black Americans had jobs than they had the month before. Absolutely remarkable.
Is there a sense that we didn't think these jobs were coming back, or this wasn't possible? Manufacturing jobs. What has triggered this reversal?
Companies are investing in manufacturing, and we are now starting to take manufacturing and re-gear it, if you will, for the next phase or the next reality of manufacturing. This week, for instance, we saw a $2.2 billion investment into General Motors for their automated car division. Right, so we are doing that. But also, if you looked at a chart, you can see why people were pessimistic about this. It was just straight down. We went from 17 million to 12 million manufacturing jobs, and all the experts said they couldn't come back. Since January of last year, 350,000 have come back. And then there's construction. Over 300,000 of those jobs have come back. Even mining.
It seems like people will have more confidence, too, to go out and look for jobs. People that maybe thought they could never get one. People that didn't graduate college, for example. And people are hiring them.
I tell you another good tidbit from last week. The Federal Reserve, they do a report card in the economy, and they say more and more businesses are getting rid of the drug test and hiring nonviolent felons. To your point, there are Americans right now who are working that a couple of months ago They never thought they'd ever have a good paying job. And now, you know what? You can go get yourself a $50,000 job, driving a truck, working in manufacturing. You can do something to help your family and feed your family. It's amazing.
Yeah, giving them
it really
a purpose.
Is good.
It's a great place to be right
Really.
now. All right, Charles, always good to have you break
Thanks
this
a
down.
lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Charles.
All right, still ahead on the show, comedians on the attack.
One mother to another. Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
Do that again.
I hate watching that. Samantha Bee, not the only one, though. Mostly all of late night is far left, as we know. So does comedy need a course correction? Two comedians are here. They are going to debate. You don't want to miss it. Coming up.
Plus, is there such thing as being too patriotic? One business hit with a violation. Charles, can you believe this? No. I mean, they got hit because they had too many flags in the lawn. Somebody complained, and they told them to get rid of them. And they did something you'll love instead. Stick around.
Pete is going to send him more flags.
When I see your light shine, I'm going home.
Hikers fall to their deaths from a popular landmark in Yosemite National Park. The men fell from El Capitan, a 3,000-foot vertical rock formation. Still unclear how high up those climbers were at the time. This is the second climbing death at that park in less than 2 weeks. Also, police are hoping for a miracle after two teens are swept away by an overflowing creek. Georgia first responders forming a human chain you can see there to search the rapidly moving waters. Divers struggling because of the strong current there. Family members say Robert Wade was walking along the dam when he fell in. The other teen jumped in to save him.
Wow. All right, we've been teasing this idea of excessive patriotism and the fact that this town in Massachusetts basically told a business that their flag display had gone way too far, but they decided to fight back with even more flags. Listen to this soundbite from an employee there.
There was a note in the door from the building department stating that we had a violation, a flag violation, excessive flag. We feel this is a patriotic act. It's not about our business. It's about supporting our troops, supporting our veterans. I think the flags speak for themselves. I don't think we need to get into a fight with City Hall.
So a couple of pieces of information. This is their private business property, okay? They do it every year. They put flags out between Memorial Day and the 4th of July, and they're being told, Abby, by the town that these flags are used for commercial purposes, and they've got too many.
Yeah, so John Crandall is the man you just heard there. He's an employee, but he also owns this property. And he says the town wants the real estate company to take down some of the flags and leave up what they say only what they call a reasonable amount of flags. Says they still haven't told me how many reasonable is. So you have to ask the question, what does commercial mean in this case? Because he's saying an American flag, this is to represent our veterans who've been deceased. This is honoring those who have sacrificed their life to live in this great country.
Of course. Can you imagine being that town manager? Excuse me, sir. I'm here to serve you papers. You've got too many flags on your property. You're just too patriotic.
Is that what happened?
I'm citing code 43.
And that's how he sounded.
I mean, what do you do?
Yeah. What do you do? You do what this guy did, and you put double, triple, quadruple the flags there and say, all right, this is what we're going to do.
I love it. I hope there's like 2,000. Yeah, take me to court for my American flags. Like, that is how you have to respond to every, city manager that wants to.
Yeah, Crandall.
I got my rules.
He says we feel.
Do you have a pencil in his pocket?
Definitely.
He says we feel this is a patriotic act. It's not about our business at all. It's about supporting our troops, supporting our veterans. That's all that this is about. It is about supporting this country and all that our men and women
with all the division in the
did for
country
us.
right now and all kinds of issues, this is one where you could say, look, why are we wasting a second fighting this small business? Let them sell their products and have a small business. Let them show flags. Let them celebrate.
What would you do?
patriotism.
How would you respond if you got the sign saying you were too patriotic, or they came and spoke to you the way Pete just said, take down the flags? How would you respond?
Kindly to that city manager that, this might be what you do. You just say, hey, I put a flag inside my jacket. Okay. Maybe, what if I got it? Dave, are you going to cite me for excessive patriotism?
We should send that bureaucrat down here.
We should.
After
we should have him on.
Yeah, have him on.
The town manager?
The town manager.
See what he really sounds like.
That guy should run for town manager. That would be my suggestion.
Pete,
all right.
I don't like your jacket, Pete.
Email us, friends@foxnews.com. How would you respond? Did he do the right thing?
Oh, man. This show is fun.
And he's coming on the show.
Oh, and we're going to talk to him at 8:50. Outstanding. Not the town manager,
but the
business owner.
John
And then
Crandall.
maybe the town manager. Maybe he'll call in and we'll ask him. All right, remember the school that held a moment of silence for Hamas terrorists? Well, the principal of that school now responding more than 2 weeks later.
We'll have to tell both sides of that story. Let's check that out. Plus,
let's do that.
Corey Lewandowski says the media won't admit it, but President Trump has had a great 2018 so far. He's here live to talk up the president next.
This is your shot of the morning. A big congratulations to Rick's dad, Bob Reichmuth, at 81 years old. He is retiring this past week.
Super cool. Since 1980, he's been the proud owner of Bob's Barber Shop in Rick's hometown of Prescott, Arizona. He's pictured here giving his last haircut to family friend Bob Hinshaw. Rick, so cool.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Bob, we have been friends with the Hinshaws since I was born. And still in town, still friends with him. That was his last haircut, which was fitting.
I can just picture you as a little boy hanging out at that barbershop.
I did.
And what experiences you probably
Cleaned the
had?
barbershop, got paid, ran to buy a roll of stamps when they needed stamps for the barbershop.
Now I know why you always have such a sharp haircut. I'm serious. It's like burned into your brain, isn't it?
That's actually, I was always the rebellious one with the hair. Like I had long hair. I would never want
What
to
is he
get a
going to do at
haircut.
this time, Rick?
I think just kind of relax. I'm trying to convince him to sell his ATV. Because he still has ATV, which I think is maybe not a good idea anymore.
Don't
but I know it's a
Steal
mix,
the keys,
you know?
Rick.
Steal the keys. So he's getting ATV hikes.
So he's
still
riding around
in
on an
our
all-terrain
town.
vehicle at
Yes.
81?
Yeah, hikes a lot.
That's kind of cool.
He's raised an amazing
He's
son.
the youngest looking 81-year-old I've ever seen.
Isn't he?
Yeah.
He looks amazing. So
Wow.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's about time to relax.
What's the weather out in Arizona
Prescott?
today?
What's that?
What's the weather today out in Prescott?
You know what? They have a chance of rain, which is good news. I will tell you, if you live in Arizona, you like to get some rain. Let's walk over to the weather maps. We'll look at that. But it is going to be hot out there. Here's the temps as you're waking up this morning. Very warm still across the south. We're going to continue this kind of trend. We have one little front moving through here. Behind that is less humid air, which is good news. And then we have this disturbance here across parts of the mid-Atlantic, and this is causing problems. Remember the Ellicott City flooding we saw last week in Maryland, and unfortunately more rain that's going to be stubborn here for the remainder of today. You see that little rotation right there. This is the future radar of this, so you see how this plays out, hanging out throughout the day today. Eventually this front moves in from the west and kind of pulls this up. Tonight, big showers moving across parts of Jersey, eventually and throughout areas of New England, and then the cooler air really settles in tomorrow. Take a look at that, just 53 for a high in Boston in June. That isn't very much fun. All right, guys.
Rick, I think you need to keep the keys.
From the ATV.
Don't
I
steal the
know.
ATV.
Sorry, Dad. I called
He's
you
going
out
to have
on
more
this one.
time on his hands. He needs to drive the ATV around. Don't take it away from him.
This is a battle we're having in the
Yeah,
family
I can
right
imagine.
now, I can tell
Many
you.
other families
Yeah.
as well. Thank you, Rick. All right, turning now to some other headlines we are following closely. Senator Bernie Sanders joined the leaders of Black Lives Matter to call for an end to mass incarceration. Listen to this.
No more jails, no more incarceration. Let's educate our kids. Let's deal with poverty.
Well, that rally in Los Angeles was much different than Sanders' previous run-ins with the Black Lives Matter movement. The group famously shut down one of his rallies back during a protest in 2015. Remember that? Also, the principal of a school holding a moment of silence for Hamas terrorists is finally apologized. That is according to the New York Post. The head of New York City's Beacon School wrote a letter to parents saying in part, quote, "I regret that the announcement offended anyone in our school community. Moving forward, I will take every care to ensure school-wide announcements are carefully reviewed." Last month, students honored the 60 people killed in Gaza protest. Most of them were members of the Islamic militant group.
Some were not.
And police officer who helped deliver a teen 18 years ago surprised him at his graduation. Watch this.
As soon as I walked out and saw him, I recognized him from pictures and everything. So yeah, it was a nice surprise.
Officer Robert Hunt was completing a traffic stop when Thomas's parents pulled over next to him on a Maryland road. The 24-year veteran noticed that the teen's mom was in labor and jumped into action. She gave Thomas the middle name Robert as the tribute to that officer. How great is that? They all stayed in touch over the years through Christmas cards.
That's really awesome.
It's a great story. Pete, over to you.
Thanks, Abby. Well, just call them the left's resistance army. Comedians like these have had a field day making jokes about President Trump and his administration before he took office. But these jokes have taken a turn and become more personal and more vulgar. Watch.
Mr. Trump, your presidency, I love your presidency. I call it disgrace the nation. The only thing your mouth is good for is being Vladimir Putin's holster.
You know, Ivanka, that's a beautiful photo of you and your child, but let me just say, one mother to another, Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
If anyone's an expert on hypocrites, it's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. That was not a looks-based joke. That was about her ugly personality.
So, has comedy crossed the line? Here to debate two comedians themselves, Michael Loftus and Woody Seed. Gentlemen, thanks for being here this morning. I got to admit, I'm conflicted because we live in a free country. I believe in free speech. I think comedy tells a lot of truths that you can't sometimes otherwise tell. It just seems, though, Michael, if I can start with you, that it's so dominated by the left that it's become a one-sided comedy show of Trump hate.
Just look at that picture that you had from the Vanity Fair. All of those comedians were from the same political party. This is not about free speech. There's plenty of free speech if you're a Democrat. If you're a liberal, you got free speech until the cows come home. But if you're a Republican, no way. You can't tell a knock-knock joke about Obama without having the FBI all over you, tapping your phones and bugging your hard drive.
Woody, would you acknowledge that at some level, the left will give more of a pass to things that are about and against Trump, whereas if a conservative were to say it, the free speech confines just seem tighter?
To a point. I believe that the left is reacting the way they should be reacting right now. I mean, we have a president right now that actually tweets.
Well, yeah, we have a president who tweets because the so-called mainstream media would never tell his side of the story otherwise. But are you saying things like what, you heard what Colbert said in the open, what
Yes.
Samantha Bee said? I mean,
Yes.
is that an appropriate response to a difference over how a president is doing his job?
I believe it's an appropriate response to the way the president is doing his job and the way the administration is acting right now. I mean, the lunacy around a lot of this needs to be addressed, and it is comedians who are addressing these things. And of course, the sound bites of Sunday morning sound a little bit risque, but they actually should be.
It's propaganda. It's straight up propaganda.
It is not propaganda.
Yeah, it's almost
he's
Michael,
supposed to be talking.
But is it almost
These are the people who are supposed
uninteresting?
to be talking.
But Woody, go to Michael and then back to you, Woody. Is it almost uninteresting though? Because it's all so one-sided that it's predictable, Michael.
It's completely uninteresting. These guys have forgotten that their job is to make people laugh. They're not even comedians. There's no punchlines. They're just shouting insults into a camera in a room full of people who already agree with them. They are the loudest sheep in a room full of sheep. That's not brave. That's not pushing the envelope. You're just literally preaching to a jacked up choir that already believes you.
Sure. I mean,
the brave thing is to be leaning to the right.
Well,
Like a guy like me, but you know what? I'm just on YouTube doing my thing.
Wouldn't you acknowledge that the brave thing is, in a lot of these places, say it was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, for a conservative get up there and tell some jokes that aren't Trump hate and maybe reflect back on, I don't know, Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or the way the media fawned over Obama and goes after Trump. You would do it. Woody, I mean, you could acknowledge there's a deficit of that.
That has happened. The funny part about the Obama administration was that he was himself, his coolness. So out of that, you have the Key and Peele and angry Obama, his angry persona of Leroy. Right now, we have an angry seeming president. We have an angry seeming administration. Everything has flipped right back to almost Reagan-era exclusion and seclusion.
Reagan-era
and now we have a president.
seclusion.
We have a president right now talking. Literally, we're talking about collusion with Russians. Who should be pointing these out? Of course, there's no punchline. The punchline is in the politics. So somebody has to stand there and say, "Hey, look at what this is. This is the comedian's job.
But you're
This
saying
is
there's
what we go back to."
Reagan-era exclusion, yet we just had Charles Payne on talking about black unemployment rate is at the lowest it's ever been. That's not exclusion. That's a better way of life.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the black unemployment being at the lowest it ever been would have been based out of Obama administration. What has happened? This is the fallout from that. So the jury is even still out right now on what Trump is doing and what is going to be. What needs to happen is people need to point out the lunacy, the idiocracy. He's crushing it. Yeah, he's crushing it. He is crushing Twitter. He is crushing athletes. He is crushing foreign heads of administration. I mean, this guy tweets.
Michael, last word. I don't know what the issue is with Twitter. I mean, it's a modern convention. Go ahead, Michael.
There's no issue with Twitter. The issue is
I
actually
love
that.
it. Donald Trump's bravado, and he can back it up. He's going to get the Nobel Prize for peace with North and South Korea. He's doing great. Unemployment all-time low. Small businesses are loving it. We have freedom. We have capitalism.
We have freedom.
Capitalism
we have
and
capitalism.
entrepreneurship saves more people. We save more people. We lift more people out of poverty. This is we are living, I believe, in the golden age of baby.
Hey, Michael, and what do you guys should take it on the road? I think it'd be a good show.
We could debate this. This would be great, and it would be good to see.
I'm in.
A right
Maybe we can be
versus left.
on Obama's Netflix channel.
Maybe on Obama's Netflix channel. It's quite possible. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank
That's
you.
a great laugh, by the way. Have you seen this? A Democratic congressional candidate comparing the president to Osama bin Laden in his new campaign ad. Watch.
Dan Helmer. I approve this message. I'm different. I'm not a politician. After 9/11, the greatest threat to our democracy lived in a cave. Today, he lives in the White House.
The man behind that ad joins us next hour, and I'm going to debate him. But first, Corey Lewandowski, here live, coming up next.
500th day in office tomorrow. As our next guest points out, it has been a great year for him so far, but you wouldn't know it by listening to the anti-Trump media.
Here to weigh in, former Trump campaign manager and co-author of the book Let Trump Be Trump, Corey Lewandowski. Good morning, Corey.
Hey, Corey.
Morning.
What do you think?
Good morning.
What do you think the media has largely missed?
Well, they've missed so many things. If you think of what this president's been able to achieve in 2018, 2.5 million new jobs have been created in this first 6 months of this year. Historic tax cuts are now taking effect. The release of American hostages overseas that the president personally negotiated without giving boatloads of cash to these countries. And then you think about what he said when he was over in Davos, Switzerland. America is open for business. You couple that with the fact that this president has assigned the Department of Homeland Security to work with at-risk schools to harden those so that our children are safe. And you think about all the things he's been able to achieve. Historic unemployment for African Americans, historic levels of unemployment for the Hispanic community, a stock market which continues to go up, and those are just the tip of the iceberg. You know, and then you look at what Secretary Pompeo and now the president is going to be doing on June 12th, which is a historic summit with Kim Jong-un to potentially denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. What more can the American people ask for?
Well, Corey, and yet he's faced historic resistance, unprecedented from all quarters, from never-Trumpers to the media to Democrats. Yet, what has been the key to him pushing through that and fighting through that and getting to the place where these very real accomplishments have added up?
Well, this president has forced Congress to continue to act and continue to move on his agenda. And I know that he wants Congress to do more. He's looking at an FY 2019 budget, which is going to cut $3 trillion over the next 10 years so that we're not spending more than we're bringing in every year. But, you know, we've got more circuit court justices approved in this administration than any administration ever. But Congress needs to stay in session. They need to keep working. They need to go back and they need to get these ambassadors approved so we don't have career diplomats holding over in some of those positions. Congress has to get on the president's team and accomplish what he wants, which is more for the American people.
What do you think of this letter that has just been leaked out from the New York Times? Letter from the president's top attorneys back in January sent to the Mueller team talking about the interview and reasons why they shouldn't do it. And the main one being that the president has the power to shut this thing all down. What is your response to that?
Well, first and foremost, it goes right back to the biggest problem that this administration has had, which is leaks coming from either inside the building or somewhere within the administration. And I don't know where this information was leaked from. If it's from the Mueller team, that's very concerning. If it's from someone within the administration, that's even more concerning. But I think the premise is exactly right. If the president were to ask me, and he never has, I would recommend not sitting down with the Mueller team, because what the Mueller team can do is they can write a report to the Department of Justice and ultimately to Congress on if there was any collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. And I know unequivocally when I was there was no collusion, there was no coordination, and they have all of the evidence to already demonstrate that. This investigation has been taking place now to the tune of over $10 million for about a year and a half. It's time to end the investigation and tell the American people what we already know.
Okay, Corey, but on the substance of the letter, they seem to be making the contention, the president's lawyers, that he cannot face obstruction of justice charges because he's the top executive, a very wide berth on executive power. Do you believe the president is above the law?
No, look, nobody is above the law, but I think what they have argued, and it makes a lot of sense to me, is that if you try to subpoena the president, the Giuliani legal team is going to take that to court to say the president cannot be subpoenaed in this particular issue. Now, if they can work out without a subpoena, that's one thing. But they have laid out the argument that the president is above a subpoena in this issue based on legal precedents. And that legal precedence goes back to the Clinton administration in the late 90s. Where the Justice Department ruled the very same thing. So that's what I believe they've based this on. And again, I'm not an attorney, but that's what I understand this to be from.
Well, he's got the right to fire his FBI director. I mean, that's at the heart of a lot of this. Corey, thank you for your time.
We'll
Appreciate
see where
it.
all this goes. Good to see you this morning.
All-star second baseman who may be best known for managing the 1986 New York Mets to the World Championship. And in his new book, My Wild Ride in Baseball and Beyond, he discusses how being raised in a military family set him up for success. Legendary skipper Davey Johnson joins me now. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm a Yankees fan, so this is a little tough. And these sluggers, I understand, are from the Bronx. Right. So there's only a couple of Mets fans here. I don't want to mention they're having a rough year, but these kids, I think, are having a great year.
But they got to hold my ring earlier, right, guys? Now you're more Met fans now. You got the World Series for the National League Mets.
Now, let's talk about your story. First of all, when I'm reading your book, you had cocktails with Ted Williams.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of lessons did you learn from him that you could apply to these kids?
Well,
Greatest
I'll tell
hitter.
you, yeah, he was the greatest hitter that I in baseball. That everybody knows Ted Williams, left-hand hitter. I asked him one time. I was playing for the Orioles when we were training in Miami. He was coming down with 2 television cameras, and I ran up to him and said, "Mr. Williams, can I ask you a question?" He said, "Sure, son." I said, "Did you really squeeze the bat like, the sawdust out of the bat?" He said, "No, I held the bat like I was holding a bird or a fish. And I didn't want it to get away, but I wouldn't kill it." So
that's a good lesson
and
for
we
you.
became friends after that. And every time I'd go to Washington, I'd talk to him. And
When he
I'd
was
hit
with the Senators.
Senators, and I'd hit like 500.
Yeah.
And finally, the owner of the Senators said, $500, you talk to another player.
So talk about growing up in a military family. How did that set you up for success?
Well, I started Little League in a place called Winter Park, Florida, and we were going to win a championship. Father got transferred to San Antonio, and so I got to play there, and I got to see how everybody played around the country. And I still made the team in San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought maybe I'm okay. Maybe it's okay to move around. So that was fun.
And also, you in the book say, no I's, no R's, no indecision, no regrets. How does that apply to these young people?
Well, you go after what you love. You know what I mean? And there are a couple rules that I got, though. As you go a long way, get a good education. Education is the key to everything. But as long as you want it and you're willing to work hard at it, I didn't care about a guy's ability. I cared about how much he had in his heart. His makeup, they call it. And it's just you paying attention, concentrating, and going all for it.
What about learning to lose? Because I remember I would strike out in Little League. Sometimes I'd have a big hit and I'd be really proud. Sometimes I'd strike out and you'd feel horrible. How do you learn to lose and channel that to get better?
Well, losing is not the nicest thing, I mean, whether you're a losing pitcher or you don't get any hits, but that should drive you to practice harder, and there's always going to be a next time. And that's the great joy. And I think losing teaches you not to be a good loser, but that you just got to work harder.
You say no regrets, but as I read the book, I thought you had at least some second thoughts about those great Mets teams that you managed. You came up in the minor leagues with Doc Gooden, Darryl Strawberry, and it sort of gnawed at you that they end up having these drug problems that really sapped a lot of their greatness. For these kids, as they've got temptation ahead of them, they're going to have people trying to pull them off the right track. Do you wish you had done more? What's your hope for these young people?
Well, one thing, if you know how to live life right, take care of your body, stay in shape, if you want to be an athlete. Sometimes when you become pretty famous, then the guys that aren't very famous that you grew up with, they may want you to do some bad things. And you have to know how to say no and make sure they understand no. And that's like doing drugs or stuff like that, and which would be very bad for you.
Davey Johnson, My Wild Ride in Baseball and Beyond. All the proceeds go to his wife Susan's charity, which
teaches young girls their college, go to college. She provides the scholarship funds and gifts and mentors, and it's to support our scholars, which is 47. She has 47 young women in college from underprivileged areas.
It's an honor to have you here, sir.
Oh man, it's great
Good
to
luck
be here.
with
It's
it.
an
Great
honor
to finally meet you.
Thanks.
All right, still ahead. Reince Priebus, Dinesh D'Souza.